Gallo Pink Chablis, the first really new table wine in years.
Glass of beer every time, because it gives you one and only one.
Blue Nun, sir. It's exquisite.
The 1970s poured out plenty of experimental liquor labels, bold, flashy, and often disastrously short-lived. From patriotic bourbons to space-age vodkas, distillers chased trends faster than consumers could keep up. What began as a decade of creative risk-taking soon turned into a hangover of marketing misfires, bland flavors, and forgotten bottles. So, join us today as we explore 25 liquor brands from the 1970s that failed miserably. Falstaff beer was once a household name, a symbol of post-war American brewing success that eventually fell victim to its own overexpansion. Originating from a respected Midwestern brewery, Falstaff built its empire through aggressive acquisitions and low prices, briefly becoming one of the nation's top beer producers.
Get pleasure, Falstaff side, the most refreshing beer a thirsty man can pour. Yet light enough to leave room for more.
However, rapid growth couldn't hide declining quality and inconsistent flavor, which alienated loyal drinkers. The company's marketing failed to evolve with changing consumer tastes as light beers and national giants like Budweiser dominated shelves. Attempts to modernize the brand with new packaging and regional slogans couldn't reverse its downfall.
A change of pace. Falstaff, man-size pleasure. Falstaff is always brewed with extra care for the finest beer possible.
Once celebrated for its affordability and reliability, Falstaff ended up representing the dangers of mass production without innovation, an iconic name that faded into obscurity. But what happens if the beer claims to be a diet beer? Gaeblinger's beer holds a curious place in brewing history. It was the world's first diet beer, pioneering a concept that would later dominate the market.
Take advantage of the taste of a great old-fashioned beer. A natural beer with no preservatives, brewed with the purest spring water in the world.
Developed by Swiss chemist Dr. Hirsch Gaeblinger and brewed by Rheingold, it promised the full flavor of beer with fewer calories. Unfortunately, the public wasn't ready for the idea. Drinkers associated beer with indulgence, not restraint, and Gaeblinger's marketing leaned too heavily on its low-calorie pitch instead of taste or quality. The beer's flavor was described as thin and artificial, failing to attract repeat buyers. Ironically, Gaeblinger's innovation paved the way for Miller Lite, which perfected the same idea a few years later.
Roses are red, violets are blue. Light beer from Miller, I love you. You got a third less calories than the regular beer, and really are less filling, which is something to cheer.
In the end, Gaeblinger's became a forgotten trailblazer, brilliant in concept, disastrous in execution. Glenfarclas, 1970. Whiskey was crafted during a golden age of Scotch production, yet its release in later years struggled to resonate beyond collectors and connoisseurs. Produced by the family-owned Glenfarclas Distillery in Speyside, the whiskey promised traditional craftsmanship and rich sherry cask depth.
I would absolutely commend the 1953 Glenfarclas as a superb collectible whiskey.
However, its high price and understated marketing limited its reach in a decade obsessed with modern blends and flashy branding. While its flavor profile, laden with notes of dried fruit, oak, and spice, was praised by enthusiasts, casual drinkers found it too complex and expensive for everyday enjoyment.
Spiciness of the oak, the dark fruits, the sherry, everything kicks in and gives a enormous potpourri of aromas.
Competing brands like Glenfiddich and Chivas Regal captured broader appeal through slick campaigns and accessibility. Glenfarclas, 1970, remained admired but commercially stagnant, proving that excellence alone doesn't guarantee mass-market success. Few liquor names tried harder to sound rugged than Bulleit Frontier Gold Whiskey, a cheap spirit that dressed itself in cowboy charm. Its label promised wide-open plains and gold rush adventure, but inside the bottle was a harsh, uninspired whiskey that even saloon regulars avoided. The brand's Western aesthetic, complete with spurs, stagecoaches, and dusty slogans, couldn't hide its poor distillation and weak taste.
Yeah, on the palate now, the oak has definitely really come to the forefront, so I'm getting that big oaky punch from it now. Sweetness has kind of died back a small bit on the palate.
Positioned as a budget bourbon, it struggled to stand out among mid-tier competitors offering better quality at similar prices. Consumers quickly learned that its frontier theme was all hat and no cattle. When marketing glitter faded and word spread about its blandness, Frontier Gold rode off into obscurity, leaving behind nothing but a faint trail of disappointment. Karuizawa, 1970. Whiskey stands as one of the most intriguing yet commercially ill-fated spirits of its era. Distilled at the small Karuizawa distillery nestled near Mount Asama, it was crafted with meticulous Scottish-inspired methods and aged in sherry casks for depth and richness. Despite its exceptional quality, boasting flavors of dark chocolate, incense, and dried fruit, it failed to find a strong market in the 1970s, when Japanese consumers preferred lighter, more accessible whiskeys.
As a Japanese whiskey lover, tasting one of these whiskeys that's incredibly rare or exclusive is a properly magical experience. It's so hard to describe really what that feels like, but it's...
The brand's austere, old-world presentation contrasted sharply with the flashy marketing of Suntory and Nikka, leaving Karuizawa largely overlooked. Limited production and minimal exports compounded its invisibility. Ironically, decades after its closure, bottles of Karuizawa 1970 became legendary collector's items, proof that its failure was purely commercial, not craftsmanship. Few beer launches were as hyped or as doomed as Billy Beer. Endorsed by Billy Carter, the outspoken brother of a U.S. president, it debuted with massive publicity and public curiosity. Consumers rushed to buy it for the novelty rather than the taste, only to discover a bland, watery beer that failed every expectation.
Well, this is a can of the famous Billy Beer, made by President Carter's brother, Billy.
Despite its celebrity backing, the brand's gimmick wore off fast as word spread about its mediocrity. Cases began gathering dust, and collectors bought cans only as political memorabilia.
Because they're worthless! Everyone saved one of these cans! They are worth nothing! You should have recycled them! They are worthless!
Billy Carter himself admitted he didn't always drink it, which sealed its fate. The brand became a punchline in advertising history, symbolizing how fame and marketing alone can't salvage a product that lacks real quality or identity. When fame couldn't guarantee flavor, could innovation and light beer experimentation with Meisterbrau Light change the game? Before Miller Lite became a household name, Meisterbrau Light tried to pioneer the light beer category, but stumbled badly. It was an ambitious experiment in offering lower-calorie beer to health-conscious drinkers, yet its taste and branding failed to connect with mainstream audiences. Marketed under the struggling Meisterbrau label, it suffered from a poor reputation and inconsistent brewing quality. Drinkers described it as weak, metallic, and forgettable. When Miller Brewing Company later acquired the formula and rebranded it as Miller Lite, the same idea found massive success.
Light beer from Miller. Tastes great. But what I really like is it's less filling. And Light's got 1/3 less calories than their regular beer.
Meisterbrau Light's failure wasn't in innovation, it was in execution. The concept was ahead of its time, but under the wrong banner, it became a forgotten prototype for one of America's biggest beer revolutions. Old Frothingslosh may hold the title for strangest beer marketing ever attempted. Originally a parody from a Pittsburgh radio show, it became an actual product, billed as the pale stale ale with the foam on the bottom.
It was a joke. It was just a spoof.
On the radio.
On the radio. Every Christmas for years, they used to come out with different bottles than the different cans.
Consumers bought it for laughs, but rarely twice. The intentionally silly branding, featuring a beauty pageant Miss Frothingslosh, turned novelty into confusion. Instead of being quirky cool, it came off as gimmicky and unappealing. The beer itself tasted flat and unbalanced, matching the joke's absurdity. Collectors later prized the cans, but drinkers never took the brand seriously. In trying to sell comedy in a can, Old Frothingslosh proved that consumers might enjoy a laugh, but not at the expense of what's inside the bottle. Rheingold Extra Dry once reigned as a New York beer icon, but its 1970s revival proved that nostalgia alone couldn't fill a glass. After a brief disappearance, the brand was brought back with flashy advertising and promises of a return to authentic refreshment.
Rheingold's way of bringing you a colder glass of beer every time, because it gives you one and only one ice-cold glass of natural Rheingold in each can.
Unfortunately, consumers had already moved on to lighter, trendier brews. The relaunch failed to capture younger drinkers, and older fans found the formula had changed and was less crisp than they remembered.
Folks with crackers and sardines do it. They all enjoy Rheingold beer. Friendly, freshening, happily dry.
Despite heavy promotion and attempts to reconnect with its former glory, Rheingold couldn't compete with national giants dominating the shelves. Its comeback was short-lived. A reminder that even beloved classics can't survive on reputation alone when the taste and timing aren't right. But what about Bruichladdich whiskey? Did it survive? Let's find out. Bruichladdich, 1970. Whiskey tells a bittersweet story of ambition, craftsmanship, and market misfortune. Produced on Scotland's Isle of Islay, it was crafted during a time when light, floral-style malts were falling out of favor to the peat-heavy whiskies that dominated global tastes.
Meets this French beauty, falls in love with it, can't believe his luck, and the rest is history. On the taste, it's just beautiful on the front palate.
Despite its elegant maritime character and subtle notes of honey, citrus, and sea breeze, Bruichladdich struggled to find an audience. Its refined style was too delicate for those seeking bold Islay smoke, yet too complex for casual drinkers drawn to mass-market blends. Poor distribution and inconsistent branding further dimmed its prospects, and the distillery itself faced several shutdowns as sales declined. Though it failed commercially in its own decade, Bruichladdich 1970 is now treasured by connoisseurs for its purity and lost-era charm. Ripple wine was the go-to cheap buzz for college students and cash-strapped partygoers, but it never earned respect beyond its bargain price. Marketed as an easy-drinking fortified wine, it packed more alcohol than flavor.
Like beer, you serve Ripple ice cold, but with Ripple you can pick a flavor. Red or white. Ripple get a zingy, easy-going down taste.
Often compared to cough syrup or sugary grape soda. Pop culture mocked it mercilessly, with comedians and sitcoms turning Ripple into shorthand for lowbrow indulgence. Though it briefly thrived on notoriety, sales eventually collapsed as consumers grew embarrassed to be seen with it. Wine lovers rejected it for its artificial taste, while younger drinkers shifted toward beer and cocktails. When the novelty faded, Ripple disappeared entirely. Remembered today less as a beverage and more as a cultural punchline of cheap intoxication and poor judgment. Thunderbird tried to shed its reputation as a Skid Row staple with a flashy 1970s makeover, but no amount of rebranding could erase its past. The relaunch included new packaging, modern ads, and attempts to market it as a fun, urban wine cooler for young adults.
Wow, totally together. Grapefruit juice, shake 'em up. Now you get soft.
Thunderbird and grapefruit juice, shake 'em up.
Unfortunately, the product's overpowering sweetness and harsh finish still defined it. Older consumers viewed it as undrinkable, while the younger demographic preferred emerging cocktail options. The rebrand backfired, reminding everyone of Thunderbird's association with cheap thrills and rough mornings. Despite the effort to make it fashionable, the public saw through the glossy image. Its failure became a textbook example of how a bad reputation in the liquor world rarely gets a second chance. Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill began as a sugary, low-alcohol wine targeting beginners and partygoers seeking a sweet, inexpensive buzz.
Strawberry Hill. It captures the taste of fresh strawberries. Now, doesn't that wine taste good?
You're right, Grandma.
Delicious.
Where'd you go?
Look, she left the strawberry here.
The original formula was syrupy and intensely artificial, appealing to teens and college students rather than serious wine drinkers. Critics dismissed it as liquid candy, and backlash soon followed over its cloying taste and lack of authenticity. Health concerns and shifting regulations also pressured the company to reformulate. While Boone's Farm survived under new recipes, the original Strawberry Hill vanished, taking its distinct sweetness and notoriety with it. Its early version lives on as a nostalgic memory for some and a guilty laugh for others, symbolizing the era's fascination with cheap, flavored wines that valued fun over finesse. Blue Nun was once one of the most recognizable wine brands in the world, yet its fall from grace is a classic tale of overexposure and shifting tastes. Originally marketed as an approachable German Liebfrau milk, it gained immense popularity among casual drinkers who appreciated its sweetness and simplicity.
One you can drink with any kind of food. Blue Nun, sir. It's exquisite.
Blue Nun, an exquisite wine, honestly.
However, that same simplicity became its undoing. As wine culture matured, consumers began favoring dry, complex varietals over mass-produced sugary whites. Blue Nun's dated branding, featuring a demure nun on the label, also failed to resonate with younger, more cosmopolitan drinkers. Attempts to modernize the image and formula only confused loyal customers while failing to attract new ones. What was once a symbol of sophistication in home dining rooms became a punchline in wine circles, an icon of kitsch rather than quality. Pink Chablis by Gallo was born from the decade's fascination with blush wines and pastel aesthetics, but its sugary simplicity doomed it from the start. Marketed as elegant yet approachable, it quickly found favor among casual drinkers seeking something light and affordable.
Pink Chablis, new and exclusive from the vineyards of Ernest and Giulio Gallo. Be a prince. Pour some tonight.
However, wine critics dismissed it as overly sweet and lacking the crisp, dry characteristics of true Chablis. The disconnect between name and taste confused consumers, while serious wine lovers viewed it as a marketing gimmick rather than genuine craftsmanship. As palates matured and demand for authentic varietals rose, Pink Chablis lost relevance. Gallo's attempt to fuse mass appeal with sophistication ended up as a fleeting fad, remembered more for its pink label than for anything in the bottle. Bacardi 151 was infamous long before it vanished from shelves, a high-proof rum that built its legend on danger as much as flavor. Bottled at a staggering 75.5% alcohol by volume, it was marketed as the ultimate party spirit, capable of setting cocktails, and sometimes countertops, on fire.
Got it. Tell me it. Bacardi 151.
That is already past that.
I'm having to drink with a fire.
While its potency attracted thrill-seeking drinkers and bartenders experimenting with flaming shots, the brand's notoriety became its downfall. Lawsuits over burns, bans from bars, and warnings from safety regulators tainted its image. Moreover, changing drinking habits shifted toward craft cocktails and lower alcohol spirits, leaving Bacardi 151 looking reckless rather than bold. Despite its cult following, Bacardi quietly discontinued it, ending the reign of a rum that symbolized both wild excess and corporate liability. Springbank, 1970. Whiskey represented a remarkable yet short-lived expression of one of Scotland's most respected distilleries. Produced in the heart of Campbelltown, once known as the whiskey capital of the world, this release showcased Springbank's signature craftsmanship.
Quite special bottle. This is an older Springbank, 15-year-old, from, I believe, the late 80s. The way that Springbank used to make their...
Lightly peated, rich in maritime character, and matured in traditional oak casks. However, the 1970 bottlings emerged during a turbulent time for Scotch whiskey. Global overproduction, economic downturns, and shifting tastes toward lighter blends left small-scale producers struggling. Springbank's 1970 edition, Though praised for its oily texture and complex notes of brine, malt, and toffee, suffered limited commercial traction. Collectors later revered it for its rarity, but at the time it couldn't compete with mass-marketed whiskeys, making it a quiet casualty of the decade's industry slump. But what about Baby Cham, as it was marketed as the drink for the ladies? Baby Cham sparkled its way into post-war Britain as a sweet, fizzy perry that promised sophistication in a tiny bottle.
There isn't another drink like Baby Cham. Look at that. Even looks like a good time. It's got sparkle, it's got life.
Marketed as the drink for the ladies, it was the world's first bottled sparkling perry and became a cultural icon with its trademark baby deer logo and glittering golden hue. Initially, Baby Cham captured the imagination of women seeking glamour without the strength of spirits. However, by the 1970s, its charm had begun to fade. Changing drinking habits, the rise of wine culture, and growing perceptions of Baby Cham as kitschy or old-fashioned eroded its popularity. The brand's heavy reliance on novelty and dainty marketing no longer resonated with a generation leaning toward stronger, trendier drinks.
Sorry, they never learn. It's like this every year. Suddenly they discover you can't have a party without Baby Cham. So buy your Baby Cham early, I say. But they never listen.
What was once a symbol of fun sophistication became a nostalgic relic of mid-century femininity. Bailey's Irish Cream emerged as one of the most iconic liqueurs ever created, blending Irish whiskey, fresh cream, and cocoa into a smooth, indulgent drink. It was a revolutionary concept at a time when creamy spirits were virtually unknown. Clever marketing positioned Bailey's as both sophisticated and accessible.
Do you fancy a drop of
Oh, Bailey's, how nice.
Fresh cream and fine old Irish whiskey laced with pure magic. Bailey's.
A drink equally at home in a cocktail glass or over ice. However, during the 1970s, its novelty risked overshadowing its quality. Some critics dismissed it as a dessert drink rather than a serious spirit.
We nose the product, and then we also taste the product. We would have a discussion and talk about the results and what we get from our different products.
And imitators quickly flooded the market. Despite these challenges, Bailey's survived where many others failed, but its early years were rocky. It straddled an uncertain space between liqueur and liquor, a sweet experiment that nearly fizzled before finding its devoted audience. Clynelish, 12-year-old. Ainsley and Heilbronn represents a fascinating yet ill-fated chapter in Scotch whiskey history. Released under the Ainsley and Heilbronn name, this expression came from the original Clynelish distillery before it was renamed Brora. It offered a bold, waxy, maritime flavor profile, characteristics that later became cult favorites among collectors.
It's very interesting how they have a marine flavor. I would say this is like the typical Highland whiskey.
However, during its time, the whiskey struggled to find commercial success. The branding was confusing, the marketing nearly non-existent, and drinkers unfamiliar with single malts often preferred blended whiskeys. Its slightly oily texture and briny taste alienated casual consumers seeking smoother options.
The start is quite oily, smooth, creamy on the tongue. As soon as you swallow, the cask is there, then some sweetness.
As a result, the Clynelish 12-year-old quietly vanished from shelves, only to be rediscovered decades later as a hidden gem, appreciated more in hindsight than it ever was in its prime. The Glenlivet 25-year-old Special Jubilee Reserve was a grand attempt to commemorate a royal milestone with elegance and prestige. Released in limited quantities, it was designed to celebrate the spirit of tradition and craftsmanship associated with both the Glenlivet distillery and the occasion it honored.
What I will say is this one, even though it's probably a bit younger, does taste a bit more refined. That's probably because it's 100% first fill American oak. It's first fill.
Housed in a stately bottle and ornate packaging, it embodied luxury and exclusivity. Yet, despite its regal image, the whiskey struggled to resonate with contemporary drinkers.
So what this is all about is flavour. This whiskey is all about taste. It's definitely the Glenlivet. You're going to find it on the nose. Oh my God, I love that.
The high price tag, coupled with a market still warming up to ultra-aged single malts, limited its audience. Many consumers viewed it as more of a collector's curiosity than a drinking experience. Ultimately, the Glenlivet Jubilee Reserve faded into obscurity, remembered today as a rare relic of ambitious 1970s marketing more than a celebrated masterpiece. Isle of Jura, pure malt, emerged during a time when Scotch producers were redefining how to present single malts to an evolving audience. Distilled on the remote island of Jura, it promised rugged authenticity and maritime character, a contrast to the mainland's smoother, Speyside whiskies. The bottle's sleek design and pure malt label sought to attract adventurous drinkers looking for something new.
That syrupy thing that I was getting on the nose.
Yeah.
So that syrup sort of follows through. I think the palate is a bit on the creamy side for me.
However, the term pure malt caused confusion, as many mistook it for a blended whiskey rather than a single malt. Combined with uneven marketing and limited distribution, it failed to gain the prestige of its competitors. While Jura later reinvented itself successfully with more refined bottlings, the original pure malt remains a forgotten experiment from an era still learning how to sell island whiskies to the wider world. Glenflagler. Rare all-malt Scotch whiskey was a bold yet ill-fated experiment from one of Scotland's most obscure distilleries. Produced at the Moffat Complex, an unusual facility that housed multiple stills for different styles, it aimed to create a distinctive, all-malt character combining depth and smoothness. Marketed as a refined alternative to blended Scotch, Glenflagler positioned itself as both innovative and premium.
Is liquid history. What we are trying today is something very special indeed. Inverhouse Distillers actually built a grain distillery in 1964.
However, the whiskey struggled to define its identity in a market dominated by established Highland and Speyside names. Its subtle, light flavor profile didn't impress critics or collectors seeking bolder malts. Poor distribution and inconsistent quality further hindered its reputation. When the distillery closed, Glenflagler quietly vanished, leaving behind only a few surviving bottles, now prized curiosities from whiskey's experimental 1970s chapter rather than celebrated classics. Sheriff's Bowmore Single Malt Whiskey represents one of the earliest commercial attempts to bottle Bowmore as a single malt before the brand achieved global fame.
This is going to be a treat, Kieran. There's no two ways about it. This is just ticks all my boxes, really. So this is a bottle of Bowmore Single Malt Whiskey made on the island of.
Produced under the Sheriffs of Bowmore, the original owners of the Islay Distillery, this whiskey carried a distinctive smoky character tempered by coastal sweetness, a hallmark of Bowmore's later style.
Whiskey fans have probably heard about the Lords of the Isles and the fact that they were headquartered here on Islay. Who were they and why did they have their base here?
Despite its authentic island heritage, Sheriff's Bowmore struggled to find traction beyond Scotland. At the time, the single malt market was still in its infancy, with blends dominating consumer preference. Limited marketing, modest packaging, and inconsistent export reach meant it never achieved the recognition it deserved. When new ownership modernized Bowmore's image, the Sheriff's label was quietly retired. Today, it's remembered nostalgically as a collector's gem from whiskey's transitional age. Sunset Very Strong. Rum tried to sell serenity in a bottle, its label glowing with palm trees, orange skies, and gentle waves. It was marketed as the perfect tropical escape for laid-back evenings and beach-inspired cocktails.
You could smile at the end of the day, 'cause it's sunset strong tonight. You sure to smile at the end of the day, drink sunset strong tonight.
Sadly, the fantasy stopped at the packaging. The rum's taste was flat, thin, and oddly metallic, missing the smooth tropical warmth that its branding promised. Consumers found it forgettable, and bartenders avoided using it in signature drinks. Even aggressive advertising couldn't mask its lack of character or craftsmanship. Competing against flavorful Caribbean imports, Sunset Very Strong rum simply couldn't shine. The brand faded as quickly as the sunsets it celebrated, remembered as a pretty label hiding a spirit with no soul beneath the surface.